For decades, One Piece has defined the ultimate adventure, following a rubber man's wild quest for freedom and the Pirate King's throne. But what if that iconic straw hat never touched Luffy's head? What if Garp's dream actually came true and Luffy became a high-ranking marine instead of a pirate? Imagine the Gomu Gomu no Mi serving absolute justice. Would the world be safer or just completely broken? I've got 3 theories for us to explore, so sit back and enjoy the ride. So as we jump in, let's set some ground rules. The fact that Luffy isn't a pirate would mean that there are many other factions that he could join. He could be in the Revolutionary Army, a bounty hunter, or even take so many positions in the world of One Piece. To keep this straightforward, let's assume that Luffy is strictly part of the world government. Also, let's not pay attention to the other roles. Since Luffy doesn't become a pirate, let's take him away from Shanks' influence, or any of the factors that would lead to him considering it. Now let's say that Luffy wasn't the son of Monkey D. Dragon. We'll also picture him as the son of, most randomly, Akainu. I know this is pretty out there, but hear me out. We can also assume that Akainu has a wife who dies. Now, this would drive Akainu to be more cruel in the canon events. Before she died, she conceived a baby called Luffy. Now, in this reality, Luffy would go through rigorous training, as Akainu would put the label of a mandatory successor on him. Judging by Luffy's nature, he would get frustrated with Akainu's. Akainu would get frustrated because he couldn't deal with Luffy's character. He then calls for help. Who else but Big Daddy Garp? Now Garp gives Luffy the usual taste of impossible training schedules to put him in several close calls. Luffy would develop a huge bond with Garp. After 9 years of training, Luffy finally turns 17. Let's keep in mind that this version of Luffy at that age was not a pushover. He's way stronger at this point. He should be a fairly good utilizer of armament, observation, and maybe even Conqueror's Haki. Luffy would be made an officer and wouldn't get to see his father so often. His father doesn't care about him and he's selfish. He prioritizes himself over his son. This would distract Luffy because he would begin to crave his father's validation, and Luffy would train endlessly to earn it. Finally, after the Marineford War, which would be Luffy's chance to check on his father's moves, sets, and abilities, Luffy would eventually challenge his father, ultimately defeating him in a fierce battle. He'd finally get the approval of his father, but he doesn't know what the future holds for him, as a reputable icon of the pirates would be stuck in the clutches of the world government. Okay, now that was brief and reasonable, but that was only the first of our theories. We still have 2 more loaded up for you. Now, I know you're up for some thrilling high-action scenarios. Sit back, relax, and let's hop right into theory 2. Let's make this quick, shall we? Let's hold this image in our mind. Let's imagine that Luffy actually becomes a CP0 officer. You heard me right, CP0. Now, being inspired by the freedom that Shanks carries, and the immense amount of thirst that he desires for that same freedom, Luffy would be discovered by the world government after being caught using his powers in public. Instead of being attacked, he's taken in by Garp. After a long session of trying to convince the numbskull, he finally agrees. Now, instead of taking the normal marine route, Luffy would be slotted into the CP0 faction and would train under them and become a dangerous fruit-wielding CP0 officer. And from an early age, Luffy becomes really skilled in combat, and he would have his natural instincts enhanced after brutal training. His reckless fighting style isn't just random, it's calm and calculated. He would create a deadly fighting style using the Rokushiki and his rubber attacks, combining it into a deadly style that matches up to Blackleg and scares all who hear of it. Though this would severely affect Luffy's character. CP0s are trained to suppress their emotions, even their smile. I mean, it's Luffy. That would probably never be able to break his spirit, right? And then the world government would finally come to the realization that they've created a force of nature, and not some pet playing cop, as he's able to crush entire crews and campaigns all by himself. Rumors spread through the Grand Line about a CP0 officer who laughs in battle, even when near death. He then meets a huge boulder when told to execute Monkey D. Dragon, head of the Revolutionary Army. Luffy, rejecting the mission, begins to question the world government. People like Nico Robin and Ace all contribute to his doubt, as Luffy then tries to rebel from the inside. As the missions go on, he gets tested to choose between instincts and command, time and time again, and he would one day betray the CP0 officers in order to do what's right. The government would label him as a traitor, and before they can cast him out, Luffy disappears. And with all that happening, pirates restabilize, as the rubber maniac is nowhere to be found. Revolution sparks faster. The CP0 realizes that they've lost their prized weapon, not the man who flies by the Jolly Roger, but a man that proves time after time that you can't stop the will of D. Now that was wild, wasn't it? Talk about if Luffy was cool, but you know what would be really cool? You smashing that subscribe button. And now that that's out of the way, grab a snack because this is where I finally blow your mind. Let's jump into our last theory. Luffy goes through the usual, wants to board with Shanks, gets denied, gets in trouble, and Shanks loses an arm because of him. You know how it goes, right? Now it all changes with Luffy's initial mindset. He wouldn't want to sail with them after all. He would immaturely threaten to stop the red-haired pirates and become a hero like his grandfather, which would result in them laughing at him and leaving to Luffy scarring himself like usual and rolling with them as a means of investigating them, or so he says. And he would eat the devil fruit, thinking that it was a top-secret pirate tool. He would end up getting scolded and whacked by Shanks as usual. Everything becomes even more different from here, with Shanks' one little promise. Now let's rephrase his challenge. It wouldn't be, return this to me when you become a great pirate. It would be, I don't want you to be government scum, you have so much potential, but if you really want to become a Marine, do what you must, and one day, come to defeat me if you can. But just promise me one thing. Promise me that you'll be a free man. Luffy would agree and would work hard in becoming the best Marine. He would train with Garp and beg him to make him stronger. After rigorous training with Garp, Luffy would train day in and day out to become stronger and defeat Shanks once and for all. Now we have to keep in mind that the events that play out in this timeline wouldn't exactly follow the events in canon. Unfortunately, Zoro and Usopp would die, seeing that there would be no one to save Zoro, and since Captain Kuro would be pronounced dead, there would be no one active in Syrup Village, and Usopp would likely die trying to protect his love. Now, Sanji would go on to live normally, without ever finding his true passion to sail in the East Blue and cook the most exotic fish. He wouldn't necessarily die, taking into account that Mihawk was just heading there to deal with the Krieg pirates. Now, Nami would also be left living in a meaningless and endless cycle, trying to get money for Arlong and free her town. With nothing much to do, Luffy and Kobe would be taken to Marineford to train and meet with some admirals and great marines. And they would also learn the CP0 fighting style Rokushiki. Garp would soon be informed of how out of control Crocodile is, and the constant hassle and reports coming in from him. The marines would set sail to bring him down. Luffy is way stronger and would be able to manifest various forms of haki. Taking down Crocodile shouldn't take him as much energy as it originally did. But even after a long battle, Luffy would later defeat the Warlord, gaining fame for his incredible feat of heroism. And then Luffy's news about defeating Crocodile would spread far and wide. He'd be promoted to captain level. Shanks will hear about this news behind the shadows and stand proud for Luffy. After this, Luffy would complete more and more missions. He would defeat Doflamingo and shut down his evil Smile Fruit operations. He would also run campaigns and missions to put down the evil Yonko and their twisted operations, like Kaido in Wano. Luffy would then be seen as a symbol of absolute and unshakable justice, strong enough to even rival Yonko on his own, just like his grandfather. Now at this point, Luffy should have unlocked Gear 5, and would have been promoted to Admiral level alongside Kizaru and Fujitora, even though he would surpass them both combined. And one fateful day, Luffy sets off on a voyage. His troops request to follow, but he doesn't allow and prefers to go alone. He lands on an island with tremendous haki, and standing right before him is the reason that he took the voyage in the first place. Shanks would commend him on his achievements, and would show how proud of him he is, reminding him there's one more thing for him to do. And a thrilled Luffy would engage him straight up, and defeat Shanks in an enjoyable fight, truly fighting freely and proudly. Shanks would then embrace him, telling him he has once again made him proud, and mocking his Marine uniform. After taking down all the Yonko, he would be seen as the biggest Marine in the world. He'd use this to promote one vice in their ranks: freedom. And there you have it, folks. 3 theories on what could have happened if Luffy never became a pirate. Now before you jump ship, what do you think of my 3 theories? Let me know in the comments, and check out the next cool video that's coming up. See you in there.